So you're going to hear a lot about this because everybody's obsessed with it. So I figured I'd cover it again. But something in my coverage of this particular topic has changed a little bit. Also, I apologize for sounding a little bit weird. I just had surgery and I can't breathe out my nose. So I sound like let's just say it sounds gross. At any rate, systemic racism. I've heard it quite a bit. I've heard it tons. People talk about immigration and say it's systemic racism because of immigration. Yet nationality is not race, so how is that possible? Well, I'll tell you. Let's first start off with systemic. I'd like to divide and conquer, as it were, but this approach might not be possible here much shortly, longer, because things have changed, of course. But let's look at systemic first. It's usually, you can skip the bodily versions of it. It's affecting the body, circulatory system, endocrine system, so on and so forth. Those don't count within this definition. What they're referring to, as it were, is the definition D for systemic, which is the fundamental or predominant social, economic, or political practice. So if something's practiced politically, economically, or socially, then it's systemic. We got a systemic problem here. They also think that if you got a system of any kind, let's say the justice system, if there's one thing wrong with it, the whole thing's fucking wrong. Hence, defund the police, for example. They're a part of the justice system. Well, if you have some corrupt cops, because they are people too, and yes, cops can be assholes, the whole system's corrupt. The whole system's bad. The whole system's just gotta go. These are the type of people that get a dirty dish and throw away their dishware instead of washing it and cleaning it and fixing things. If something breaks, they just throw it away and get a new one. That's their mentality. They don't know how to fix or repair anything. But that's besides the point. They're worried about the system. The system is corrupt. The lending system used to have redlining. Doesn't anymore. It's actually illegal. It has been for quite some time. It's been illegal longer than I've been alive. Let's just put it that way. But no, it's totally systemic. It's systemic something or other. Systemic evil. Systemic. Well, there's another part of this word game salad that they're leaving out, that I left out, and I left it out for a very particular reason. And I must skip out of the definition realm and point to something that just changed. As of June 11th, they finally got their wish. Merriam-Webster is changing the definition of racism to reflect systemic oppression. In other words, Merriam-Webster has now adopted social justice into the definition of racism. It's no longer what we used to think of it. It's now something new because it's been redefined by Marxism. Isn't that great? Isn't that grand that we have Marxism to help us redefine racism? Just to give you a little flavor on this, of course, they mentioned George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. They don't mention any of the people that were beaten in the street that were black cops that were murdered. No, none of those people. They're race traitors. Don't forget. No. So they have changed their definition based on all these things that just happened, and it's just the best way that Merriam-Webster can give you the new and improved social justice. So they finally got to Merriam-Webster and convinced them to change the word. And this person is an author. It's amazing. Can't imagine what she focuses on. Race. Says so right down. Dirty diversity. A practical guide to foster equitable and inclusive workplace for all. Equitable. Yeah, that's a great idea. Not meritocracy at all. Just lowest common denominator to get the least amount of work done. It's a great idea. Socialism in a box. In a book, for that matter. But no, let's look what they did to racism. Since I have Merriam-Webster up here. So the belief and practice that race is primary determinant of human traits and capacities for all racial differences to produce an inherent superiority or of a particular race. So that part hasn't changed, right? That's a good thing. That's a good thing. That's what racism is. Thinking your race is superior or inferior to another based on something. The most common one that I've heard out of the right, alt-right particularly, because they're social justice warriors for the flip side of the coin. And that is, well, blacks are just not as smart as the whites or the, oh no, they say whites or the Asians. They're superior as seen with the bell curve study that was done. Shut up. All right. The spread is so fucking small. It is negligible at best. And not only that, the law of averages says that you cannot judge a person. You cannot apply an average to an individual. It doesn't work. Anyways, so they changed it and added, I think, 2 and 3, which muddy the waters so badly with this freaking definition that good luck trying to have a civil conversation with anybody, because now discrimination, racial discrimination, is racism. So if you don't like somebody based upon their race, whether or not you think they're better or worse than you, that is now racism. So literally just liking or not liking, you don't find blacks attractive. You don't find whites attractive. You don't find Asians attractive. You are discriminatory against Asians, therefore you're racist. Just muddied the fucking waters now, didn't you? Racism had a very distinct definition. That primary, that first definition. Thinking you're better than somebody else based on race. That was a good definition. That was very specific, very succinct. Now, it can be a doctrine or political program based on the assumption of racism and designed to execute its principles. A political or social system founded in racism. Well, social justice warriors, Black Lives Matter, and those fucking idiots that are on the Marxist postmodern philosophy train believe that the United States was founded in racism. Founded in racism. Think about that. The entire country is founded in racism. Why? Because whites ran it. We came over here. We conquered. We killed a few 1,000 people, to say the least. We had slaves with us. Well, 4% or less, the wealthy had slaves with them. And that's how it went, of course. Totally founded in racism. That's totally the case, really. The immigration system, it's founded in racism. Why? Because people of other races try to come to America, and some of those people get rejected. Therefore, it's racist. Look at that slippery slope that's just been created by changing the definition. So we can no longer have a civil conversation when it comes to systemic racism. They try to claim it's systemic, that the system's involved, that the system's designed that way. Despite diversity training in police officers. They all have to go through the diversity training. They have to be taught not to discriminate. Unfortunately for these dumbasses, they don't listen to the studies that have proven over and 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 over again that diversity training does not work. In fact, it makes the problem worse. You're now cognizant of all races, and you're just super snowflake, and you're just so very cognizant of everybody's race that you have to tread on eggshells to make sure you don't offend anyone. Because heaven forbid, you might clash in culture, and then you might offend somebody you weren't intending, and then now you have a systemic problem of racism. Now you're accused of racism because they muddied the fucking waters of racism. Racial prejudice or discrimination. Literally anything. Discrimination is now racism. That is the dumbest fucking thing in the world. So just think about that. They've changed the words. Systemic racism is now the entire system. The social order is racist because Black Lives Matter said. We have a systemic racist problem because Black Lives Matter said. And since no one can be racist toward whites, according to their own doctrine, it's always white people's fault. Here's the thing that people leave out of this whole thing. They still think it's one race against each other. They still live by and believe and practice, mind you, the first definition, believing one's race is superior over another. That specific thing. Well, guess what? I'm going to redefine racism. I've had enough. I'm going to take a lesson from Peter Boghossian, where he redefined faith. In my original book, I redefined faith a few different ways, trying to outline what faith and belief was, trying to give it a frame, because so many people redefine faith and belief in their own view in order to explain it, if you will. Well, I'm going to do the same thing. Racism is placing value on race as if it was a virtue. So when I hear people say, I'm proud of my skin, you're racist. I'm proud of being X. You're racist. Period. Why was race even brought up other than to tell me what you look like? See, there's a fundamental lesson that I've also reframed so that I could absorb it and live it in my daily life. Many people have heard it. And if I put it on here, actually, my video would be blocked in about 12 countries. Isn't that amazing? 12 countries don't want you to hear this particular message because it was from a king. Let's put it out there. It's from a king, a wise man, a holy man of sorts. Race can only tell you what you are. It doesn't tell you who you are. It does not tell you who you are. So to place any value upon your race is both to be vain, callous, and superficial. It's useless. So what if you look a certain way? Does that make you better than someone else? Worse? Does that give you permission to be a dick? Does that give you permission to treat others differently? No, it doesn't. So to place any value upon race whatsoever, to me, is racism. I have redefined it yet again. Which actually, and interestingly, will fall in line with racial prejudice or discrimination as defined by these social justice assholes. Because to place value on a thing, you must therefore discriminate against other things of equal kind. For example, change. Would you rather have a quarter or a dime? If you had cash, would you rather have a Benjamin or a Washington or a Lincoln? It's all about the Benjamins, baby. We discriminate our money based on value. Do we not? You want the bigger bills, not the smaller ones. You want the more expensive things, not the lesser ones. We discriminate based on ownership of value, too. For example, if I were driving a Porsche, I'd be looked at differently than if I were driving a Honda Civic. I've actually experienced this, to be honest. When I was driving a Camaro versus a Ford Escort, the Camaro had girls turning their heads. Ford Escort, not so much. Even though I had some killer stereo in there, it was pretty cool. Anyways. To put value upon race will make you racist, period. In my eyes. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you say. But if you think for a second, I'll let it slide. You're incorrect. So, here's why I have a problem with systemic racism and why I think this whole thing is absolute bullshit. Now that we've clearly defined things, now that we understand what we're talking about from frame of reference, now that you understand that any value placed on race is in fact racism to me, what system places value on race? Equal opportunity employment does. That's racist. Needs to go away. The EEOC, goodbye. Scholarships based on race. Discriminates other races. Needs to go away. It's racist. Goodbye. Racial equity. Segregation needs to go away. It places value based on race. You can live here and other people that don't look like you can't live here. So, Chaz, you racist pieces of shits up there taking over Seattle, you're racist. You need to go away. Think of any other program that exists out there that segregates or separates based upon race. And in this new worldview, you are now a system of racism. You have developed a system of race. You are systemic. Because you have designed an entire system based upon the racial qualities of that person. If you don't see a problem with that and think you're holding each other up because you look the same, you better reflect upon what you're describing. Because now you're describing everybody as the other is the systemic racism problem. Instead of looking inner and reflective. Anyways, I've gone on too long about this. I just wanted to clear out these muddy waters a little bit. Because they've dirtied them again. Systemic. To be systemic means that a part or a whole of a system, the whole system in social cases, is founded in racism. The fact that we have outlined specifically in justice system in particular that people should not discriminate against race does not make the system racist. However, people in the system can act racist. Do you see the difference there? The system isn't designed to be racist. However, people acting in the system can be racist. It's possible. There are racist cops, I'm sure of it. There's racist people, there's going to be racist cops. People are people. So how can it be? You and I get along so awfully. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it explained something to you. Maybe you'll get it now. Who knows? I just wanted to point out that any system that has anything that has racial equity, racial this, racial that, racial anything of the design of race, you've now made it a systemic racist problem. So the only way to remove systemic racism is to remove the founding quality, the original problem, race. If you're making racial programs, you are making a systemic racist problem. Because now you're integrating into the system a component of race. The exact opposite of what these dumbasses are fighting for. They want racial equity. You're now making a systemic racist problem. Because you're making a prejudicial decision. With equity in particular, you want everybody to have a level playing field based on race. That is a systemic racist problem. You're defeating yourself. Good job. I hope you enjoy the end. I'll see you next time.
Oh my God, I deserve this. 1, 2, 3, 4.